Welcome to Whispers in the Dark. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out the amazing products in the description. Now enjoy the story.
I still can't sleep properly. 3 months have passed since that camping trip to Mount St. Helens, and every night is a battle against the memories and the fear of closing my eyes. My therapist suggested that putting it all down on paper might help me process the trauma, so here I am. I was never one to believe in monsters or mythical creatures. I was always the skeptical guy, the rational one, the one who found logical explanations for everything. Now I don't know what to believe anymore. It started as a simple weekend trip. My job as a software developer in Seattle was suffocating me, and I desperately needed some time away from screens. I decided to take a solo hike through Ape Canyon, near Mount St. Helens in Washington. It's a popular spot among hiking enthusiasts, with stunning scenery and an interesting history. The name comes from a supposed attack by ape-like creatures on a group of miners in 1924. Of course, I always considered it a local legend, the kind of story tour guides love to tell to attract visitors. I parked my Jeep at the trailhead on a Friday morning. The sky was clear, the temperature perfect for hiking, one of those rare fall days in the Pacific Northwest without rain. I planned to spend 2 nights camping, explore the area thoroughly, and return on Sunday afternoon. I was carrying the basics: a lightweight tent, sleeping bag, dehydrated food, water filter, and my cell phone with a solar charger. I also had a Swiss Army knife and bear spray, standard precautions for the region. The first part of the trail was exactly what I expected: peaceful, invigorating, exactly the escape I needed from the suffocating routine of code and virtual meetings. I took some impressive photos of the canyon and volcanic formations. The first day was perfect. I set up camp in a small clearing about 5 hours hike from the trailhead. It was an elevated location with good visibility, as recommended in the guides to avoid surprise encounters with wildlife. The first night passed without incident. I woke up refreshed the next morning, made coffee on my portable stove, and planned to explore a more remote area of the canyon that few visitors venture to. It was on this second day that things started to get strange. At first, they were just small things that could easily be explained: broken branches in odd patterns, stacked stones that seemed to have been deliberately placed. I attributed everything to other hikers or the natural conditions of the terrain. Around noon, I stopped for lunch at a scenic overlook. While I was eating, I noticed something peculiar. An abnormal silence had settled in the forest. No birdsong, no squirrel chatter, nothing. Any experienced hiker knows that this usually means a predator is nearby, and I started to become alert, expecting to see a bear or a cougar in the distance. But what I felt was different. It was like something was watching, calculating, waiting. I decided to head back to my campsite earlier than planned. On the way back, I had the persistent feeling of being followed. Every few minutes, I stopped to listen, but only encountered the same oppressive silence. That's when I noticed the footprints. Right near the trail, partially visible in the damp earth, footprints too large to be human, but definitely not bear tracks. They were approximately 18 inches long, with 5 distinct toes, almost like a human foot, but much larger and wider. My first instinct was to document it. I took pictures with my cell phone and placed my hand next to one of the footprints for scale. While I was doing this, I heard a loud crack of a branch breaking not far away. I stood up quickly, feeling my heart race. I called out a hesitant hello. "Is anyone there?" but got no response. I decided it was time to get back to camp immediately. I arrived at my tent in the late afternoon, much earlier than I had planned. Part of me wanted to pack everything up and leave right then and there, but it was already getting dark, and the descent through the rugged terrain would be dangerous in the dark. I decided I would stay alert during the night and leave at the first sign of light in the morning. I prepared a quick dinner as the sun set, constantly scanning my surroundings. As darkness settled in, I started to hear strange sounds coming from the surrounding forest. Not the normal noises of wildlife, but something more deliberate. It sounded like something large was moving around the perimeter of my campsite, always staying in the shadows, out of the reach of my flashlight. Around 10 p.m., the sound stopped abruptly. The silence was almost worse than the noises. I went into the tent, but kept my bear spray and knife close by. I tried to sleep, but I was hypervigilant, every little sound waking me up completely. It was shortly after midnight, according to my watch, that I heard it. A sound I will never forget, a kind of vocalization that was neither fully animal nor human. It was a deep cry, almost a groan, that seemed to communicate something. The worst part was that, seconds later, a similar response came from another direction. There was more than one. And they were communicating. I froze completely still, trying to control my breathing. My rational mind tried to find explanations, coyotes, maybe? But I had never heard coyotes make sounds like that. Bears? Definitely not. Other hikers playing a prank? Possible, but unlikely in that remote area. The sounds were getting closer. Suddenly, something slammed against the side of my tent hard enough to shake the whole structure. I choked back a scream, grabbing my bear spray so tightly that my fingers ached. Another bang, this time on the other side. They were surrounding my tent. That's when I heard something that chilled me to the bone, heavy breathing, right next to the thin fabric that separated me from whatever was out there. I could feel its warmth against the canvas. Then, for a moment, I saw the silhouette of a huge hand pressed against the outside of the tent. It wasn't a bear paw or any other animal I knew. It had 5 distinct fingers, but it was massive, easily twice the size of my own hand. In that moment, I did the only thing that occurred to me. I turned on my flashlight to full power, pointing it at where the hand had been. For a brief second, I saw the silhouette recoil and heard a sharp sound, almost like a yelp of surprise. I seized the moment to rip open the tent zipper and sprayed the bear spray in the general direction of where the breathing was coming from. I stumbled out of the tent, flashlight in one hand, spray in the other, frantically spinning around. That's when I saw them, 3 huge figures at the edge of the clearing. The flashlight beam didn't reach far enough, but I could make out enough. They were over 7 feet tall, massive bodies covered in dark fur, and they moved in a strangely upright way, but not entirely human. When I turned the flashlight directly at one of them, I saw for an instant its face, a disturbing mix of human and ape-like features, with eyes that reflected the light in a way that made me feel like I was looking at something intelligent, something that was assessing me. They retreated into the darkness when I pointed the light directly at them, but they didn't flee like scared animals would. It seemed more like they were regrouping, recalculating. I realized at that moment that I wasn't dealing with ordinary predators. There was intelligence behind those eyes, a curiosity mixed with something that felt almost territorial. I couldn't stay there. Abandoning almost all of my equipment, I grabbed only my small backpack with water, phone, and some energy bars. I started running down the trail, using the flashlight to illuminate the rugged path. It was idiotic to descend that trail in the dark, but it seemed less dangerous than staying at the campsite. As I ran, I heard movements parallel to the trail. They were following me, but not on the main trail. They moved through the dense forest with an ease that should have been impossible in the dark. From time to time, I heard those strange vocalizations, always in pairs or trios, as if they were coordinating their movements. After about 20 minutes of panicked running, I tripped on an exposed root and fell hard. My flashlight flew from my hands, rolling a few feet before stopping, illuminating the forest diagonally. That's when I saw one of them clearly, standing less than 30 feet away, watching. In the indirect light, I could see details I would rather have missed: the long, disproportionate arms, the huge hands, the hunched but definitely bipedal posture. And those eyes. Eyes that didn't belong to any known animal, with an ancient and wild intelligence at the same time. Our eyes met for what felt like an eternity. There was something in the way it watched me. It wasn't the hunger of a predator, nor the fear of prey. It was almost curious, contemplative. Then, slowly, it retreated into the darkness. I recovered my flashlight with trembling hands and continued down the trail, this time at a more cautious but steady pace. The sounds of pursuit continued, but always at a distance, as if they were just escorting me out of their territory, making sure I was leaving. At sunrise, I stumbled into the parking lot where I had left my car. My legs barely supported me, my throat was dry from exhaustion and fear, and my mind was desperately trying to rationalize what I had witnessed during the night. I drove straight to the nearest police station in Cougar, a small town nearby. The sheriff listened to my story with an expression that wavered between concern and skepticism. When I finished, he sighed deeply and offered me coffee. As I drank, he told me that I wasn't the first to report encounters like this in the region. In fact, the reports went back decades, including the famous 1924 incident that gave the canyon its name. Miners camping in the area reported being attacked by giant apes who threw rocks at their cabin all night long. At the time, their accounts were ridiculed, but over the years, dozens of similar stories have emerged. The sheriff told me that officially they recorded these incidents as encounters with unidentified wildlife, but unofficially, the park rangers and locals called the creatures Ape Canyon hominids. He explained that most encounters were peaceful, sightings at a distance, mostly. Attacks like the one I experienced were rare and usually only happened when someone camped in certain specific areas that seemed to be established territories of the creatures. I was astonished that something like this could exist without official recognition, but the sheriff just shrugged and said, "There are a lot of remote places in these mountains. Valleys that hardly ever see human presence. It's not that hard to believe that something could remain hidden, especially something that seems intelligent enough to avoid contact." A search team was sent to recover my abandoned equipment. They returned later that day with disturbing news. My campsite had been completely dismantled. My tent was ripped into neat strips, almost methodically. My supplies were scattered, and some things were simply missing, including any metal or shiny plastic items. Even more disturbing, they found large branches arranged in a circular pattern around where my tent had been, something that clearly hadn't been done by ordinary animals. The photos I took of the footprints, to my horror, were corrupted on my phone. Of the 12 I took, only 2 showed anything recognizable, and even those were blurry enough to be inconclusive. The sheriff didn't seem surprised by this. In the following weeks, I researched obsessively. I found that reports of similar creatures, often called Sasquatch or Bigfoot, exist throughout the Pacific Northwest, with particular concentrations around Mount St. Helens and other remote mountainous areas. Many of the stories mention behaviors that I myself had witnessed, strange vocalizations, movement parallel to trails, curiosity about tents and equipment, and a tendency to avoid direct confrontation with humans. I also discovered that many anthropologists and biologists consider it possible, though improbable, that an unknown species of great ape could exist in the vast forests of North America. The region has ecosystems capable of supporting large mammals, and its density and inaccessibility would make it possible for an intelligent species to remain largely undetected, especially if its population was small and actively avoided humans. 3 months have passed, and I still have nightmares almost every night. I often wake up in a cold sweat, with the vivid feeling of those eyes watching me in the darkness. My therapist says I'm suffering from PTSD, which makes sense given the trauma of the experience, regardless of the exact nature of what I encountered. I've never been back to Ape Canyon, and I doubt I ever will. But sometimes, when I'm driving along the state roads of Washington and I see those vast stretches of dense, unexplored forest, I can't help but wonder about what might be watching from the shadows, with eyes that carry an ancient and wild intelligence that our modern science has yet to classify. I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. And now I understand why, over decades, people keep reporting encounters with the Ape Canyon hominids, only to have their stories dismissed or ridiculed. There is something there, in the depths of those remote forests. Something that walks the line between man and animal, between legend and reality. And I'd rather live the rest of my life without ever crossing its path again.
We've reached the end of our story. What did you think? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to follow the channel, like the video, and check out the amazing products in the description. And don't miss the next video, you're going to love it.